perhaps the most cruel and bloodthirsty homicides ever perpetrated in Britain were the so-called Jack the Ripper murders, which occurred in East London during 1888. This was more than just murder. The so-called Jack the Ripper murders were ritual bloodbaths. The victims were slaughtered according to the oaths of loyalty sworn by members of the Masonic religion. Now, for the first time on film, we can reveal the truth about Jack the Ripper. Diaries written by Inspector Abberline of Scotland Yard at the time of the Ripper murders have been held in safekeeping by Joseph Sickert, whose father was an artist who gave art lessons to Prince Albert Victor, the heir to the throne of the British Empire in the 19th century. Prince Albert Victor was known as Prince Eddie. He was the son of Queen Alexandra and the grandson of Queen Victoria. During the last 120 years, royal spin doctors have led the public to believe that Queen Victoria was popular. She was not. Often hissed in public, Queen Victoria was a German, and so was her husband. They were great supporters and patrons of World International Freemasonry. Queen Victoria's son became King Edward VII. He was King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, King of the Commonwealth Realms, and the Emperor of India. He was the first British monarch to carry the name of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha onto the throne. Edward VII was part of the Germanic royal dynasty which had sponsored the writing career of Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit who had formed the Bavarian Illuminati in the 1770s. The Bavarian Illuminati infiltrated the upper echelons of Freemasonry, preaching a secret doctrine of a new world order, a global superstate where compassion and democracy would have no place. Since the 1700s, the Bavarian Illuminati has fragmented into an invisible global network of secret societies, which includes the infamous Skull and Bones fraternity at Yale University in the United States. Adam Weishaupt's doctrine of a new world order was laid out in 3 books which he wrote in the later years of his life. He lived in the town of Gotha, and his writing career was funded by the Saxe-Coburg dynasty, who came to the British throne through Edward VII. Edward VII was installed as Grand Master of British Freemasonry in 1875. He regularly appeared in public wearing the ceremonial uniform of a Masonic Grand Master. Like his Saxe-Coburg grandparents, King Edward VII was one of the biggest financial contributors to the Illuminati version of Freemasonry. He was crowned in 1901. Masonic lodges existed in several royal palaces, most notably in Kensington Palace, which was home to the Royal Alpha Lodge. It was here, in 1885, that King Edward VII initiated his own son, Prince Albert Victor, better known as Prince Eddie. Prince Eddie was genetically handicapped. Generation after generation of inbreeding within the Saxe-Coburg bloodline had resulted in Prince Eddie, the heir to the throne, being partially deaf. With typical cruelty, most of the royal family had no time for a partially deaf person, and Eddie's brother was groomed instead to take the throne after Edward VII died. Along with the great and the good of Victorian and Edwardian society, Prince Eddie spent much of his time enjoying himself at the taxpayers' expense in various brothels. Prince Eddie was a regular visitor of a homosexual paedophile brothel in Cleveland Street, London. Alistair Crowley, who claims to have been a member of the 1591 Studholme Masonic Lodge and also a visitor to the Royal Alpha Lodge at Kensington Palace, was in possession of love letters between Prince Eddie and a young boy at the brothel. This was a potential scandal for the heir to the throne, but the aristocracy supported the idea of paedophilia at the time. In fact, there was a revolt in the House of Lords when the age of consent was raised from 12 to 13 years of age. In fact, a much bigger scandal was soon to break, when it was revealed that Prince Eddie had made a young girl called Annie Crook pregnant. Prince Eddie had secretly married her, even though he was forbidden to marry a Roman Catholic. Officially, this meant that he would not be able to become king. In 1884, the Pope had condemned the satanic nature of Freemasonry, and the royal political elite split into two factions, one Catholic and anti-Masonic, and the other Protestant, fiercely guarding the real power behind the throne, which was World International Freemasonry. Prince Eddie had secretly married a Catholic, and that was a form of treason. It infuriated powerful Freemasons. Mixed with a potent dash of royal paedophilia and Alistair Crowley's collection of homosexual love letters between the prince and a young boy, the British establishment was facing perhaps the biggest scandal ever to have rocked the monarchy. They decided to do what the monarchy has always done: stage a massive cover-up operation. In 1885, Annie Crook was kidnapped from the sweet shop where she worked, and simultaneously Prince Eddie was forced into a carriage which galloped away in the opposite direction. It was the last the young newlywed couple ever saw of each other. Prince Eddie was taken back to Buckingham Palace and strictly forbidden to leave the premises. Annie Crook was illegally incarcerated at Guy's Hospital, where one of Queen Victoria's doctors, the wicked Sir William Gull, picked some of her brain out with tweezers, turning her into a mentally retarded, pathetic shadow of her former self. However, Annie Crook had told several friends about her marriage to the young prince. Annie had just given birth to a baby, a bastard heir to the British throne. Dr. William Gull kept Annie Crook imprisoned for 156 days in Guy's Hospital, and then sent her and her baby to workhouses where they were used as slave labour. One of Annie's friends, a young girl called Mary Kelly, worked part-time as a prostitute at Whitechapel in East London. Mary Kelly and a group of her friends decided to write a blackmail letter demanding money from the royal family. The year was 1888. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn had been formed the same year. Freemasons marched in full ceremonial regalia in public. The Bavarian Illuminati had splintered into a secret society inside another secret society. All the thrones of Europe were occupied by royal Masons. What Mary Kelly and her group of friends had not counted on is that not only were they trying to blackmail royal Masons, they were blackmailing psychopathic crowned killers who would prefer to kill rather than give over a single penny of their wealth. The occult powers behind the throne convened a special meeting at the Royal Alpha Lodge in Kensington Palace. This elite group of Masons called themselves Princes of the Blood Royal. And they decided to form a ruthless hunting party which would hunt down and ritually murder Mary Kelly and her friends, thus putting an end to the blackmail attempt. Sir Charles Warren, a senior Freemason and head of the Metropolitan Police, provided intelligence on the whereabouts of Mary Kelly and her female friends. Sir William Gull prepared grapes injected with opium and alcohol, which would be offered to the girls. John Netley, a ruffian coach driver who worked for several aristocrats, would supply transportation. And J.K. Stephen, a socialite of Victorian London, would act as a lookout whilst the ritualised murders would take place inside Netley's horse-drawn carriage. According to the diaries of Inspector Aberline of Scotland Yard, diaries which were sealed in wax and held in safekeeping by the Victorian Impressionist painter and friend of Prince Eddie, William Sickert, the so-called Jack the Ripper murders were not the work of one crazy individual. These were meticulously planned ritual murders conducted in the Masonic tradition by a large group of aristocrats who hunted the young female victims rather like a country expedition killing foxes. So who was the leader of the Jack the Ripper gang? none other than one of Britain and Ireland's most senior Freemasons, the son of a duke, member of Her Majesty's Privy Council, an Oxford graduate, a Justice of the Peace, Secretary of State for India, Member of Parliament for South Paddington in London, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Leader of the House of Commons in the British Parliament, friend of King Edward VII, and Mason Magister Majestic Magistorium of the Orange Order in Ireland, future father of Britain's most famous Prime Minister. The leader of the Jack the Ripper gang was Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill. It was Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill who sliced Masonic emblems into the faces of the victims. It was he who coordinated the so-called Jack the Ripper murders. And this film puts an end to a 120-year cover-up by the royal political elite of Great Britain. Until the young Lady Diana Spencer became Princess of Wales, Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill was the most famous member in the history of the Spencer aristocratic family. Her Royal Highness Princess Diana was herself a Spencer, a family which has served the monarchy for generations. She is distantly related to Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill, Jack the Ripper, and his son, Winston Churchill. Randolph Spencer Churchill was no stranger to the occult. He ripped and slashed the victims, slicing Masonic symbols into their faces. According to Masonic instruction, the internal organs of the victims were torn out and trailed over their left shoulder. For these murders were ritual sacrifices, a public warning to anyone who was considering to commit treason. In his characteristic manner, Aleister Crowley soon left Britain after the Jack the Ripper murders. The love letters between Prince Eddie and the young boy prostitute never surfaced in the public domain. J.K. Stephen, one of the aristocratic gang of murderers, was so ashamed and shocked by the ritual psychopathic behaviour of Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill that he made his confession to Inspector Abberline at Scotland Yard. Of course, there were no arrests. In fact, Scotland Yard still, to this day, take great care to cover up the true significance and detail of the Jack the Ripper Masonic murders. When author Stephen Knight was given access to the Ripper file at Scotland Yard, he found that many important documents had been deliberately lost. Stephen Knight discovered later that some of the documents he had seen during his research for his book, Jack the Ripper: The Final Solution, had subsequently been destroyed. Soon after the publication of Jack the Ripper: The Final Solution, and also after having exposed the true nature of demonic Freemasonry in his excellent book called The Brotherhood, Stephen Knight was dead.